Hi, I'm Isirabo. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is kind of funny and a bit weird. It's the start of my new series, Historical Crimes and Mysteries. This is my first video in the series, and I decided to start with a crime that's kind of light-hearted, pretty serious though, but still light-hearted, and it's basically a breakdown of how one man fooled academia and the world for decades. Also, yeah, quick side note, if you can hear that noise in the background, it's the gen, because Nigeria. So please pay no mind. I'll try to see if I can use music to cover it up. Thank you. It was 1912 and Charles Dawson had made a shocking discovery. He had discovered the missing link between ape and man, and it took the world by storm. It was something that scientists and evolutionary biologists had been trying to prove for decades, and here comes this no-name amateur archaeologist with no qualifications, no anything, and he basically just stumbles upon it by accident. But then it all turned out to have been a scam. Our story begins in 1907 in Piltdown, that's in England. Piltdown is in England, where some laborers had digging on the construction site, and they dug out pieces of bone, like they dug out bone fragments that seemed ancient and like kind of old, and they thought, okay, this could be very valuable. So they contacted a local amateur archaeologist by the name of Charles Dawson and asked him to authenticate the bones. Dawson authenticated them and said that, oh, they are very ancient and they are pieces of a human skull. And so he decided that if they could find this, then there must be more around. So Dawson basically started digging on that side and around the area, trying to find more bone fragments. And then we move forward to 1912, and Dawson found more bone fragments. This time, pieces of a jaw. So he contacted his friend Otto Woodward, who was the keeper of geology at the British Museum, to come and authenticate his find. Then his friend came and he said, okay, the skull showed human features and the jawbone showed ape features, but he could not ascertain completely that they belonged to the same creature, because the joint attachment, because there's a joint that attaches your skull to your jaw, the joint attachment was missing. How convenient. And so he could not ascertain that these two bone fragments belonged to the same creature. But no way. Charles Dawson had made his find. He had found what would make him popular. He had found what would catapult his career to the next level, and he ran with it. It was the big find of the century. Scientists were shocked. Everybody, of course, there were some people who believed it was fake, or there were some people who didn't believe it was genuine. People argued about it, especially since the missing jaw attachment was a huge point in their favor. But a lot of people also supported it. And then oh yeah, I forgot to mention earlier, his friend Otto Woodward had placed the age of the bones at 500,000 years, which is a huge find, because bones that ancient are rarely found nowadays. Like that, bones that ancient are rarely found. So, but it also had one other important connotation. It meant that also you could find the origins of man in England too. That man did not just come from Africa, or like basically like Africa, the continent, but instead man as at that time was also in England. You get the point. Now in 1949, Kenneth Oakley, in an attempt to verify the find, took casts of the bone fragments and then used fluorine dating to try to verify the age. But he discovered that, unlike Otto's claim of 500,000 years, what he got was 50,000 years. So that's changed the popular age from 500,000 to 50,000, which is not as ancient but still a worthy find. See, but that's actually led a bit more credence to the story, because it was still the same age, and he still confirmed that they were found in the same region. So it still like led a bit more credence to the story that yes, this find was genuine. This man is not scamming people. This man is not lying. You get it? Here comes where everything unravels. In 1953, a congress of paleontologists was held in London. Now, J.S. Winner overheard a colleague's conversation with someone else who was saying that, contrary to Charles Dawson's usual behavior, he hadn't really like documented this find much. He hadn't written reports. He hadn't basically followed the usual process for this kind of a huge find, something this large. He hadn't really made much noise about anything. He hadn't submitted papers. He hadn't done much about it. That he was basically just letting it die down and then not banking on his find. So J.S. Winner was one of those scientists that did not believe the find was genuine, and that now couldn't leave his mind. The thoughts didn't leave his mind. He was curious. He wanted to know why Charles Dawson was deviating from his norms and his usual behaviors. He wanted to find out for himself if the find was genuine or not. So he took casts of the bones too, and then he decided to run several tests. But he noticed a peculiarity. He noticed that the bones didn't really match in terms of age, unlike previous claims, and that it resembled an orangutan skull. So he got an orangutan skull and dyed it with permanganate, and realized that the dyed orangutan skull had a similar look to the jawbone of the so-called Ape-Man. And then with this evidence, he contacted the museum authorities, and then more and more tests were conducted. They did several tests. Apart from fluorine dating, they did carbon dating. They basically just kept testing the bones, and then the whole fraud was exposed. It was found out that it was just fragments of an orangutan skull that Charles Dawson had basically dyed and colored to match the soil where the bones were found. But at that time, both Charles Dawson and Otto Woodward, his friend, were both dead. So they could not really interrogate them and try to find out, okay, who was behind this, who were your co-conspirators, who helped you in perpetrating this scam. But there's a few things I really do not understand in this story. So you're telling me that such a huge find, something so big happened that rocked the scientific world like this, and none of the other authorities tried to check or authenticate it themselves, and instead they just took his word for it until one curious man suddenly decided to check it himself? So everybody was just like, yeah, this dude seems legit. His find is real. Really? That's one. And two, it wasn't even immediately that Charles Dawson was, or should I call it, exposed as the culprit, because at first they blamed author like Conan Doyle, I think that's his name, the author of Sherlock, the Sherlock series. He was blamed for it until 2016, where a peer review was done and they ultimately decided that Charles Dawson, who was a local and wanted acclaim, wanted fame, was probably the one who did all this, was probably like the main mind behind all this, because he had all the time and opportunity, he was familiar with that area, and in the first place it's kind of very, very, very suspicious to find that kind of thing close to each other, like to find those kind of that kind of scam, like say you find this skull bone and this ape jawbone, and then you say suddenly you got an authenticator who could not authenticate it, and then somebody else confirmed the scam too. So basically, although they never mentioned what happened to Kenneth Oakley and why they couldn't interrogate him on how he could authenticate something that was obviously not true, and where he got his age of 50,000 years from, because eventually decided that at that time the bones were not older than about 700 years. So that's another question for also Kenneth Oakley, because that's one thing that I cannot get. This story it's just funny. So basically, from 1912 to 1953, everybody was just congratulating themselves that they had found the missing link, and it was a major scientific discovery, and this man had a claim. He basically got the recognition he wanted, and then somebody's gossip that a phone that they did not send them just brought everything down, just unraveled the whole scheme. And it was kind of fun, it was very interesting, and I can't wait to talk about another mystery. I can't wait for my next mystery. I'm very interested in historical crimes, because see, a lot of the things that seem so big then, because of the advance in technology and forensics, a lot of the crimes that were committed in history, you can't get away with them the same way now that they could back then. So that's why it's fascinating to go back in history and see a lot of the things that people did, a lot of things that people got away with, and sometimes how it's coincidence or happenstance just led to them getting caught. Thank you for watching today's very bizarre and weird video. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on this kind of funny crime that Charles Dawson committed. Bye.